Since the dawn of humanity, a question has stubbornly echoed through generations. Who are we? Where did we come from? And where will we go when all this is over? Science studies the body. Religion points to the soul. But between the visible and the invisible, there is a territory called paranormality. Some people, by gift, destiny, or sensitivity, seem to have been born with the key to this hidden world. Or perhaps they have learned to open portals that most don't even know exist. Mediums, sensitives who hear voices, receive messages from other dimensions, and live through experiences like conscious projection, also known as astral projection, leaving their bodies behind and returning with answers that no book could ever contain. Who are they? What can these ancestral souls teach us about life, death, and everything in between? We, at Project Consciousness, have prepared a special series to unravel the stories and the mysteries behind history's greatest mediums. Get ready, because after this, you may never see reality the same way again. What if I told you that a 19th century woman discovered secrets that connect our physical world to invisible dimensions, and that these secrets are still being hidden from you? While society bowed before scientific materialism, Helena Blavatsky talked to masters' promotions, materialized objects from thin air, and channeled knowledge from lost civilizations. For some, she was the greatest medium in history. For others, she was the greatest charlatan ever seen. But here's the disturbing paradox. Even her fiercest critics have never been able to explain how a woman with no formal education produced works that would influence Gandhi, Jung, and Einstein. How did she know about scientific concepts that would only be discovered decades later? And why are her predictions about humanity's spiritual evolution coming true right now in the 21st century? If you're tired of superficial answers about mediumship and want to discover how true psychic gifts work in practice, this video will show you something that could forever change your view of the limits of human consciousness. Before we begin, subscribe to the Channel Awareness Project. Leave your like to strengthen our work and share it with that person who is also looking for answers beyond the obvious. Get ready, because we're going to dive into the deepest mysteries of theosophy and occultism. And I guarantee you, nothing will be the same again. Imagine a child born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but who preferred conversing with invisible beings to playing with expensive dolls. Helena Blavatsky came into the world in 1831, into an aristocratic Russian family, surrounded by luxury and privileges most only dreamed of. But from an early age, something about her was different, a restlessness that wasn't satisfied with silk dresses or pompous balls. While other girls dreamed of arranged marriages, she lost herself in dusty libraries, devouring books about lost civilizations and mystical traditions. It was as if an invisible force was calling her to something far greater than the gilded halls of Russian nobility. Her maternal grandmother was the first to notice the girl's peculiar gifts. Helena spoke to invisible friends and made predictions that came true with eerie accuracy. Once, at the age of 7, she predicted the death of the family gardener 3 days before it happened, an episode that left everyone perplexed. But for her, it was as natural as breathing. These early signs were not just childish curiosities. They were harbingers of a deep connection with what she would later call perennial wisdom. The family wavered between fascination and concern, not knowing whether it was a divine gift or a mental disorder. What most intrigued the adults around her was Helena's insatiable thirst for occult knowledge. By the age of 10, she had already read more about magic and mysticism than many scholars of her time. She found forgotten manuscripts in the most remote corners of the family library and devoured them as if they were treasure maps, which, in a way, they were. Each page revealed fragments of a larger puzzle, pieces of an ancient truth that had pulsed through her veins since birth. And when she turned 15, she began to dream of a man with a turban and a penetrating gaze who whispered secrets of distant lands. Helena Blavatsky's marriage at 17 was like trying to trap a wild bird in a gilded cage. She married Nikifor Blavatsky, a 40-something lieutenant governor, in a ceremony that seemed like a good social deal to everyone else. But to her, it was a spiritual death sentence. The man wasn't cruel, just common. He lived immersed in bureaucracy and protocol, while she burned inside with visions of ascended masters and mystical callings he would never understand. 3 months were enough for the young woman to realize that this life was not hers. And one July dawn, she simply disappeared, leaving behind titles, riches, and social respectability. The horseback escape through the Georgia mountains was just the beginning of a journey that would last decades. Helena Blavatsky decided that if the conventional world had no room for her gifts, she would forge her own path. And what a path it was! Paris, Constantinople, Egypt. Each city was a new laboratory for her experiments with esotericism and mediumistic phenomena. In London, she caused a stir in spiritualist salons with demonstrations that left even skeptics speechless. These weren't just displays. They were living proof that there were dimensions of reality that science had not yet dared to explore. But it wasn't just parlor tricks she sought to perfect. Each culture she visited offered her a piece of the great puzzle of the perennial wisdom. In Egypt, she studied hieroglyphics and ancient rituals. In Greece, she conversed with philosophers who still guarded Orphic traditions. In Turkey, she learned from Sufis about altered states of consciousness. Helena wasn't a tourist. She was an archaeologist of occult knowledge. She unearthed spiritual treasures that were being forgotten by the modern world. And it was during these wanderings that she began to have increasingly clear visions of that mysterious man from her teenage dreams. London, 1851. Helena Blavatsky was walking through Hyde Park when something happened that would change her life forever. Amidst the crowd, her eyes met those of a man she had known for years, through dreams, tall, imposing, with a turban and a penetrating gaze that seemed to pierce her soul. It was he, the Rajput prince who had visited her visions since adolescence. Her heart raced, her legs trembled, but she knew instantly that this encounter was no coincidence. It was Master Morya, one of the ascended masters who, she would discover, secretly guided humanity's spiritual evolution. The encounter was brief but transformative. Morya revealed a mission to her to bring to the West the perennial wisdom guarded for millennia in the monasteries of Tibet. But before reaching those sacred mountains, Helena would have to undergo trials that would test not only her resolve, but her very sanity. He traveled to Canada, where he learned from indigenous shamans about altered states of consciousness. He descended on New Orleans, delving into the mysteries of voodoo and African-American magic. He explored Inca ruins in Peru, where ancient rituals still echoed through the ancient stones. Each experience was another layer of preparation for what was to come. It took 3 attempts before the gates of Tibet opened to her. On the first 2, she was barred by guards and storms, as if the mountains themselves were testing her. But the 3rd time, in 1868, something had changed. Perhaps it was her unwavering determination. Perhaps it was the right moment in the grand cosmic plan. For 7 years, she lived near the Tashilhunpo monastery, studying texts in Broca, the lost sacred language, and developing abilities that defied the laws of physics: telepathy, clairvoyance, materialization of objects, communication with astral planes. For Helena, these were not miracles, but forgotten sciences, waiting to be returned to the modern world. When Helena Blavatsky arrived in New York in 1873, she carried more than baggage. She brought a mission that would forever change the spiritual landscape of the West. Her first months were spent adapting and observing, but she soon became increasingly interested in the inexplicable phenomena occurring around her. Objects materialized out of thin air, letters arrived by impossible routes, and her ability to read minds intrigued even the most skeptical. This was how she met Henry Steele Olcott, a respected lawyer who investigated spiritualism as a hobby, but became fascinated by the depth of her knowledge of esotericism and ancient traditions. The intellectual chemistry between the two was immediate. Olcott possessed the methodical organization that Helena sometimes lacked, while she brought the deep knowledge he had been seeking for years. Together, they first created the Miracle Club, where they met with other seekers to discuss psychic phenomena, Eastern philosophies, and the possibility of a spiritual science. The meetings took place in Helena's apartment, but soon the group grew so large that they needed larger spaces. It was clear there was a spiritual hunger in the West that traditional religions could no longer satisfy. And then, on November 17, 1875, the Theosophical Society was officially born, with William Quan Judge as its third founder. Its 3 objectives were revolutionary: to form a nucleus of universal brotherhood without distinction of race or creed, to promote the comparative study of religions and philosophies, and to investigate the unexplained laws of nature and the latent powers of human beings. For Helena Blavatsky, Theosophy was not just another spiritualist movement. It was the rebirth of the ageless wisdom, connecting East and West in a single stream of knowledge. And this stream would soon spread throughout the world in ways even she herself could not have imagined. In 1877, Helena Blavatsky released her first major work, Isis Unveiled, and the world of the occult was never the same. 2 dense volumes that challenged both materialistic science and dogmatic religions. They showed that ancient civilizations, especially Egypt, India, and Chaldea, possessed far more advanced knowledge than modern arrogance dared admit. It was not just a book of esoteric philosophy. It was an intellectual revolution disguised as a spiritual treatise. Helena compiled years of comparative studies, revealing hidden connections between seemingly distinct traditions, and proving that perennial wisdom has always existed, just waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. But it was with The Secret Doctrine, published in 1888, that she cemented her place in the history of esoteric thought. 6 monumental volumes presenting a complete cosmogony, from the formation of universes to the evolution of human consciousness through immense cycles of time. There were the concepts of the 7 rays, the root races, the periods of manifestation and cosmic rest, all based on manuscripts she claimed to have studied in Tibet. To critics, elaborate fantasy; to followers, the definitive map of humanity's spiritual journey. In addition to these central works, Helena wrote more practical texts, such as The Voice of Silence and The Key to Theosophy, where he condensed Eastern teachings for Western minds. This was no mere intellectual exercise. Each page was an invitation to inner transformation. He asked the reader to step outside the comfort zone of inherited beliefs and seek their own direct experience of the sacred. His writings combined philosophical rigor with accessible language, making complex concepts of esotericism comprehensible to any sincere seeker. But such boldness would not go unnoticed by the guardians of conventional thought. With the explosive growth of the Theosophical Society and the worldwide popularity of her works, Helena Blavatsky came under a relentless magnifying glass. Her claims of direct contact with ascended masters and her public demonstrations of paranormal phenomena aroused both fascination and fierce distrust. In 1884, the perfect storm formed. Former collaborators Emma and Alexis Coulomb publicly accused her of fraud, claiming that her miracles were elaborate hoaxes with secret trapdoors and magic tricks. The international press fed on the scandal like ravenous vultures, turning each accusation into a sensational headline. The London Society for Psychical Research sent Richard Hodgson to India to investigate the allegations, and the resulting report was devastating. Hodgson described her as one of the greatest impostors in history, claiming she had fabricated letters from the masters and manipulated evidence. What many didn't know at the time was that Hodgson arrived in India already predisposed to discredit Helena. His investigation was more of a witch hunt than an impartial analysis. Decades later, researchers would revisit the case and find glaring flaws in the report. But the damage to Helena's reputation had already been done. To the colonial press, she was not just a charlatan, but a possible Russian spy infiltrated in the East. Despite the barrage of criticism, Helena Blavatsky never backed down. For her, the accusations were merely the natural price that any pioneer pays when challenging established systems, be it materialistic science or dogmatic religions. Her followers saw the persecutions as confirmation that she was on the right path. After all, revolutionary truths always disturb those who profit from the status quo. The Theosophical Society not only survived the storm, but grew stronger, especially in India, where her ideas found fertile ground among those seeking to reclaim their spiritual heritage from British cultural colonialism. And it was precisely during this period of trial that Helena consolidated the principles that would span generations. Helena Blavatsky died in 1891, but her ideas took on a life of their own and spread throughout the world like seeds in the wind. Her influence transcended all expectations. Gandhi carried The Voice of Silence as a bedside book. Carl Jung found inspiration in her writings for concepts such as the collective unconscious and archetypes. Even scientists like Thomas Edison were interested in the bridges she built between spirituality and science. Theosophy had planted something in the West that had not existed before, a common language between Eastern traditions and Western minds, paving the way for what decades later would be called the movement New Age. The Theosophical Society continued to grow after his death, establishing branches in dozens of countries and preserving the core of his teachings on esotericism and the ageless wisdom. His principal works, Isis Unveiled, The Secret Doctrine, The Voice of Silence, have never gone out of print, finding new readers with each generation. More than books, these texts have become portals for those seeking to understand the hidden connections between science, philosophy, and spirituality. For many, Helena was not just a writer or spiritual leader. She was a catalyst for consciousness, who awakened in the West a thirst for direct knowledge of the sacred. Even today, her figure radically divides opinions. For some, she is a misunderstood visionary who opened crucial spiritual doors for humanity. For others, she is a character shrouded in exaggeration and self-promotion. But perhaps the true impact of her work lies precisely in this polarization. She forced the world to choose between the comfort of ready-made certainties and the dangerous adventure of seeking deeper truths. Upon leaving this plane, Helena Blavatsky delivered not only a set of ideas, but a permanent invitation to pierce the veil of the known and explore the uncharted territories of human consciousness. And this invitation still echoes, waiting for those brave enough to accept. Now that you know Helena Blavatsky's true mediumistic gifts, answer me one question. How many capacities of your own consciousness have you not yet explored? Because, deep down, the phenomena she demonstrated were not unique to her. They were dormant potentials that exist in every human being. The difference is that she had the courage to pierce the veils of the impossible. While most were content with their limited version of reality, what if you discovered you possessed abilities far beyond your wildest imagination? Helena Blavatsky proved that there are dimensions to existence that conventional science hasn't even dreamed of exploring. She opened doors that show how human consciousness can transcend physical barriers and access knowledge from other realities. The question remains, will you settle for what you've always been taught about the limits of the human mind, or will you seek to expand your own perception? The journey into the mysteries of human consciousness is just beginning. If this content has piqued your curiosity, subscribe to our channel, Awareness Project. Leave your like to help us reach more search engines, and share this video with those who also question the limits of reality. And prepare your heart, because in the next episode of our series on mediums, we will meet a man who materialized perfumes through spiritual concentration, levitated in deep meditation, and brought to the West ancient techniques capable of awakening cosmic consciousness. Don't miss